continuing on praying in the supernatural. So this is our key verse. Now, him is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think. And we're going to look at that tonight in our healing videos, at looking metal dissolve. And sometimes we just don't think about that. And that was brought to my memory when I was in Newcastle last week, and CJ's mother was telling him about her brother praying for someone who had a rod in his leg and couldn't move it. And God sent him to pray for that man. And he didn't know that there was a rod there. But when the leg moved, everyone was amazed. Everybody else knew it shouldn't have happened. And so we expect God to move sovereignly, but God always expects to work through us. And it says, according to the power that works in us, God adds his super to our natural to make the supernatural. We've talked at this verse, everything you could ever need for life and godliness to live the Christian life has already been deposited by his divine power. So God's super has already been deposited in us. And our natural is really the partnership that we do with God's super. We looked at actions, commanding, and I'm trying to use that word particularly now, and not long prayers. Now, prayers we think is asking God. We don't want to do that. We want to do commanding. Our life, is important. To have faith and to give faith is important. And consider laying on to hands, but not suddenly. That touch can be important. And then we looked at thankfulness. Okay, we've got to have an action and choose to be thankful, but that can change our attitude where we come with compassion. Well, then we looked last week at we've got to do things, God's will must be done God's way. This is the confidence we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have petitions that we ask it. And so we looked at, we've got to ask for God's will, but it's always God's will to heal. Okay? And so we've got to understand that. But we looked at for travel, for finance, for things in the natural, maybe romance. Okay? If God wills, should be things rather than our desires, make sure they're God's desires. And then we looked at, it says in Ephesians about blessing us with all spiritual blessings, not all natural blessings, but it's already been done, those spiritual blessings. Well, we're moving on tonight. I'm going to look at taking a risk. We've got to take a risk to see the supernatural. There are 4 leprous men in the entrance of the gate, and there was said to one another, why are we sitting here until we die? If we say we'll enter the city, famine is in the city, and if we die there, and if we sit here, we also die. Now, therefore, come and let us surrender to the army of the Assyrians. If they keep us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall only die. So we look at verse 4, and they looked at their options. If they stay in the city, they die. If they do nothing, they die. And if they take a risk at going to the Syrians, the worst that can happen is they die. But then what we find is God's already done a miracle. God's already done the super, and they are the ones that bring the news to the people that God has just opened the windows of heaven. So they took a risk. God had already provided his super. I want to tell you, doing nothing is worse than trying something. Sometimes doing the wrong thing is better than doing nothing. Because you realize that and then you do the right thing. So don't be paralyzed by fear of failure. And I think they're the things, particularly, what if people don't get healed? Don't be paralyzed. What if they do get healed? So ask to people, can I pray for you? And this tended to be my witnessing thing, that, I just go to people and you'd see them in some type of need, and can I pray for you? Now, fear would say, what if they don't get healed? Fear would say, what are people going to think about me? Am I this crazy person? I probably am, but people get healed because I'm crazy. You know, my cousins kind of said, you're crazy, but you know, we know God's moving through you, and it's kind of a good crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they've said yes. What are the next steps? And sometimes this is where we jump in too fast. Okay, what's the issue? Now, sometimes we just pray this nice general prayer, but I want to know, well, what am I praying about? We've got to be like a doctor, and that's what we call prayer clinic, like a doctor, and ask a patient's history. You wouldn't go to the doctor and say, Doc, I need these antibiotics. He says, oh, wait a second. Give me a history. Tell me what's happening here. I'm not going to give you a prescription until I know, some of these things. Well, I have a series of typical questions. What's the problem that needs prayer? I hate it. Someone just says to me, I'm sick, I'm ill, not feeling well. I've got to dig a bit deeper. What's the real problem? When did it start? Was there something going on in their life? Is it recent? Was there an accident? Is there any known cause such as an accident? Then is there any family history of similar issues? And so we can look at then that, maybe we need to look at other things, because they're just a few of the typical questions that I would ask. Well, start commanding. Speak to the issue. We've got to take authority and command healing. That should be short. Then check the progress on the healing need. Ask, what did you see? What did you feel? What did you think? And sometimes, people don't. But what I found is, as I speak to people I get them focused, and they can actually hear God after a while in some of these things. And it's normally they don't recognize what God's saying to them, and that gives me something to pray into. So I pray again if necessary based on that information, and I don't give up. I keep praying. We don't do 5-second prayers here. We want to pray till people get healed, and I usually pray at least 3 times, sometimes 6 times, but then come back and check up. We want to do things. We don't want to just pray for people, or command as I'm using it. We want to see people healed. When Jesus sent the disciples out, he didn't say to them, go pray for the sick. He said, go heal the sick. And we've got to understand what we do is got to be to heal the sick. Well, we're looking tonight at this first prayer is assuming there's no blockages. But what I've shared is it's important. I believe it should be 90% talking and only 10% commanding. Because when you get that information, you can direct your prayers. Your prayers are short, they're commanding prayers, but they're focused. And as I said, touch can be important. We looked at that one week. Consider laying on the hands. Now, as I said, when we're praying for the broken collarbone, we felt it was not appropriate to lay hands on that particular person, because we just felt that, that could be hurt them more. And, sometimes we do lay hands on people, sometimes we don't. So if appropriate, check up, okay? Find out what the base pain level was before they started, okay? If the pain level was 0 to 10, then after you've commanded, start, ask them, well, what was that? Now, we prayed for a woman a few weeks ago. She came out from Samoa for a knee operation, and we prayed for her. She got up, there was still pain. Well, I said, what was the pain before? And she said, would have been 8 out of 10. What's the pain now? 6. Oh, something's happened.
Yep.
So then I got Eunice to pray, and the pain went down to 4. And then I got her brother to pray, and the pain was down. She wanted steps. She wanted to test things out. And so even though after the first prayer it wasn't 100% healed, she could recognize there was a change in the pain level. As I said, ask people what they felt, they saw, they thought. Pray into that information and do checkup. Your prayer clinic, if you go to the doctor, he says, come back in a week for a checkup. Well, I want to do that, checkups. And typically next week or the next time I see people, and again, I'm praying for a pastor at the moment that's got cancer. And I've prayed for them 3 times. Eunice and I were there last week. Great results. He's getting better. But I sent him a text today saying, how are you going? Just want to do checkup. Do I need to come again? And so checkup is important. And so we'll continue on our series next week.